Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Banking Bills and Bevs. This is episode number 6. Thank you to everyone who's tuned into all the episodes so far. You're here with myself, Timmy, aka Mr. Money Jar, Tap School Billingsley, and today we're joined by special guest James Varga from DirectID.
Yeah, I think James, thank you for coming on, and I think just to kick us off, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself before we start digging into what our title really means?
Sure. So a bit of a startup junkie, live in Edinburgh, which has got a great fintech community, and been involved in financial services and open banking for an awful long time. So we started talking about what the world now calls open banking about 11 years ago, where the idea was how can we leverage the identity and data people have with their bank account to help use that to remove some of the pains that we all experience online. Credit risk, getting a credit rating, that sort of thing is a great example.
Yeah, I certainly find myself getting addicted to startup life already, only a couple of years in.
It's a lifestyle choice, definitely.
Exactly. Much, I think, to my mum's dismay, perhaps, but here I am.
Prove her wrong, you'll get it.
One day, when I'm buying her house or something.
Exactly.
And where did the name DirectID come from, James?
Just iterations of product over time. We actually started off with a digital passport, a consumer product called MyCard. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, we realized we were still a bit early for the old open banking trend, that we had a lot of work to do in the industry still before we could do what we inevitably want to do as a business. So we pivoted over to a B2B service, and it just ended up calling it DirectID because it fit with the montage at the time. And yeah, I've spent the last sort of 4 or 5 years helping to build open banking in the UK and support some of the initiatives to build it across the world.
So what exactly does your company do?
Yeah, so very simply, we help our customers understand their customers. So we use essentially that bank statement data that people have, right? That what open banking provides in the main. I guess there's 2 sides of open banking, just for clarity. One's payment services, so pay by your bank account. And the other one, the world that we live in, is account information. So we let people use that connection to the bank to share their bank statement, and we help translate that for lenders and product providers, financial services companies, to use that data to understand you as an individual so that they can give you a loan or a credit card, mortgage, whatever. Our focus as a business is credit risk. So how do we use that bank statement to solve that credit risk challenge that's in the market?
So the ID company has 2 kind of spin-offs, right? In Nomo and in DirectID. So DirectID is more the business facing, I suppose, and then more consumer.
Absolutely. Yeah, Nomo is a lightweight cash flow management tool. It's a very simple product that just helps you stay on track until you get to your next payday, essentially, without overspending, or if you have underspent, tries to encourage you to go for a beer or dinner or do something nice for yourself, because that's what motivates us all, right?
That's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have that as a little side project, but in the main is DirectID, and it's solving the credit risk challenge.
And so what's the credit risk challenge to you? I think I know what you might mean by that, but it'd be good for you to elaborate.
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of challenges. I mean, with the pandemic, one of the challenges with when you're making a credit risk decision, you want to lend somebody money, is relying on bureau data or credit reference data. So the Experian, Equifaxes of the world.
Yeah.
That data can be 6 to 12 months old at its earliest. Obviously, a lot's changed in the last 2 or 3 months, and now more than ever, you have to look for more real-time data. But most of it is around understanding you as an individual, right? And not, well, and servicing you, right? So you could be a student, you could be middle-aged, you could be divorced, you could be single, it doesn't really matter. But that richness in data, to be able to prove our income, that I have a job and this is my income level, to prove that, I don't know, I pay all my bills every month, that I'm responsible with my money, even around affordability, which is a big part of credit risk. How much of that loan repayment could you afford? You know, because you can spend £50 eating out in food or £500 eating out in food a week. Where is that threshold, right? So as a lender, I need to make sure that you can afford it, right? That you can make those payments, and what the best day to get the payment off of you is, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
That whole world, which is, you know, there's lots and lots of different dynamics there, is what the industry calls credit risk, affordability, that sort of thing. But it's trying to, for me, the excitement is around how do we flip the model instead of using this somewhat abstract data that's gathered from lots of different sources, and you know, we kind of guess, we take a risk-based model and we go, you know, you've not done anything bad, so we'll assume you're good. How do we flip that and go,
reckon we'll get our money back?
yeah, how do I service you as an individual, right? What sort of pricing can I give you? What sort of level of repayments can you support, and how do I really understand you? And that's, for me, the big opportunity with open banking.
I think that this is incredibly exciting. One, two, I think it's very much needed. This is sort of out of the scope of this call, so we won't go into it too much, but you know, credit has a history of discriminating against certain social groups in different parts of the world. It is, you know, I've had my credit score drop because I haven't updated information with one of the CRAs. Like, one CRA will think that I'm on the electoral register, the other one will think that I was living in a house that I lived in 2 to 3 months ago. And you go to apply for credit, and of course, if you do get a hard search done for, say, a loan, and then you fail, that goes as a mark on your credit report. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you're saying is actually we can be a lot more accurate and be a lot more personalized through our technology, and therefore give the consumer a better deal. I think that's wicked.
Yeah, and it's not just people that are graduated and never had credit before, right? Thin credit files are called. It's not just people that moved to a country have never had accounts or activity in the UK. But I mean, I'm not young. I'm fairly well established. I have my Experian credit score is 992 out of 1,000. So I'm a hair away from a theoretically perfect credit score. But I went into a Apple shop maybe about a year ago, and I applied for a phone on credit because I wanted the free upgrades every year, and I wanted the Apple Care and all the rest of it. I thought, you know, perfect. I'll just get it on financing instead of going on, you know, EE or whatever it was and do that. And I still failed the credit. Right?
And you never really know why.
Well, they can never tell you why. That's part of the challenge. But no, you never know why, because it's an abstract process that's based on risk and guesses, right? To not beat around the bush, it's just not, it's not tangible, right? It's not. If you looked at my financial position, you would see that I've got a good job, I make enough money. £30 a month for a phone payment is nothing, right? I just paid cash for the phone because I wanted the phone, right? So I was going to get the phone anyway. And that's the stuff that just doesn't make sense to me. If you can afford to pay cash for the product, you could probably afford it on financing.
Yeah.
Right? But the detail of information that is sort of being able to personalize that, not discriminate against, I don't know, whether you're single, you're retired or whatever. There's discrimination in all sort of facts of life, but actually just personalize it to you as an individual, I think is hugely exciting.
So you mentioned, to pull it back to our topic a little bit, you mentioned you've been working in the space for a while. What were things like before open banking? Obviously, I think we've kind of started to scrape that and touch on that so far. And how have you seen them evolve? You know,
well, it's an interesting thing because actually open banking is fairly new to the world, but is essentially, in our world, it's sharing bank statements, which we've done for 50 years. So it's not like the fundamentals are any different. The biggest changes around GDPR and the recognition that people own their own data, and that this data has value, and to help increase competition in the market, us as individuals should be able to electronically share a copy of this data safely, securely, and all the rest of it. And the real shift is that all of a sudden you've got access with the consumer, with the individual's consent, because nothing can happen without the individual saying, yes, I want to share it with you. And this is all part of the government and regulators' activity around this. So if there's any concerns there, I think people shouldn't have them. You know, it's part of regulated activity these days. But that sort of accessing that data digitally allows you to do so much more with it, right? I can trust it because it's coming directly from your bank, so I can rely on it. But also, I've got it in a form now that we can do things with it, right? We can calculate your income from your bank statement to prove that when you want to rent the apartment, and they say, "Are you employed?" You say yes, and they say, "Well, how much do you make?" And then they ask you for bank statements and pay slips and all the rest of it. You can just conveniently do that in a matter of seconds. Yeah. And it's one of the big lessons over the last sort of 10 years for me is, you know, open banking does have an opportunity to change so much of the world, but you have to focus on the use cases that really resonate with people, that matter. Consumers, us as consumers, are only motivated by very few things, convenience being one of them. So essentially what we're doing is what we've done for a long time in a different way. There was a middle ground known as account aggregation or screen scraping. And that's where your login details were used to connect to the bank and pretend that it was you downloading your bank statement and sharing it. And that, I mean, there was such a need for this data in the market that's been around for 10 or 20 years now, right? So
I think it's
preceded. Sorry?
I think it's now where I have to ask what secrets you can give me from Money Dashboard.
Yeah. So it's what we're seeing is to a certain extent just that regulatory oversight of this activity and a bit more. I don't think one's any more secure than the other. I mean, security is again a complex thing, but there is a standard approach, industry approach to doing this that allowed it to come to the mainstay, right, and become slowly part of the normal way of sharing this data. And that's opened up huge opportunities. It's helped us contextualize the data to use it for different use cases, personal finance management, finding the right rate on your electricity bills, and that's something for us. It's about credit risk and getting access to products, all the way through to transferring money. And I know companies are doing carbon emission tracking. There's loads that you can do with the data. Open banking for me is a sort of in the crossroads between GDPR and giving back control and consent and transparency to individuals around their data, and this sort of opening up of opportunity, right? The sort of PSD2, the Payment Services Directive 2 driven initiative to open up access to this data. And it kind of sits in the middle, it's at the crossroads. But the next sort of iteration is around open finance, right? We have open healthcare data. Countries like Australia are taking a very proactive open data approach to the sort of whole world, right? The whole personal data world. And eventually into self-sovereign identities, things that we control, being able to share our data. I mean, where do I think we want to live in is eventually, right? Is a world where I can prove I'm over 18 without sharing my driver's license, right?
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to give you I shouldn't have to prove I'm over 18 by giving you a copy of address. I shouldn't have to give you my full address to prove I live in Edinburgh, right? So there's lots that part of the industry still talks, the identity industry still talks about in terms of zero knowledge proof and other things. But to start with, you need access to that data, first of all. You need to validate, you need these channels to open up across the board with the consumer, us as individuals being at the middle of that conversation. And that's the big paradigm shift I think open banking is brought.
Well, Timmy, do you want to do your classic sign off? Because I stole it last time.
Oh yeah, no worries. No, this has been an awesome conversation. I feel like the three of us could go at it for much longer, but alas, we come to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for making the time to speak to us, James.
No,
where can people find you on the socials and online?
Yeah, so if you Google James Varga, Edinburgh, you'll come across me. I kind of look like this. LinkedIn is J Varga, DirectID or theidco.com, you'll find us, or go to jamesvarga.com.